Welcome back to Beyond the Track. This is episode number 50. We are halfway to 100. It's going to be a good show. I got AJ Catanzaro on me with Beyond the Track. AJ, we're going to touch on a lot of different things over the course of this interview, but I want to start with the summer. You're very, very, very busy in the summertime. Some guys race Supercross and then they're like, let me enjoy my summer. Not you, man. You are busy right now.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, Daniel. Yeah, and I feel bad for the wife because I always say, listen, when Supercross ends, I'll make sure that I'm home and I'm spending some time home. And then, okay, that turns into booking this school. And then I say, okay, well, that's it. I won't book anymore. And I don't know. I'm just a businessman, I guess. And I like to stay busy. And I feel like that's what makes me feel fulfilled.
Right.
And I'm just constantly, as soon as I accomplish one thing, I'm on to the next. And to me, it's like, that's the excitement. And I'm sure you can relate to that, right? It's just an addicting feeling.
Yeah, it becomes just who you are, right? You feel actually like you're not doing anything when you're just living a regular day.
Yeah. Well, today's a day off, for example. So I'm home with the dog. I'm stay-at-home dog dad for the day. And I have a lot of things going on. I'm doing emails. I'm doing a bunch of stuff, but I still feel like I'm being lazy. And it's like, well, hang on, just take a deep breath. I can relax for 12 hours and don't have to be running myself
Hey,
into the ground.
is it like this? Like you live your life at 80 mile per hour. So when you're only going 65, you feel like you're cruising, but you're still going 65 every day. That's
Yeah.
how it feels to me.
It's like if I'm not doing this on a crazy up ramp of just getting stuff done, I'm like, man, am I being lazy? And so I just have to check in every once in a while and just kind of take that deep breath of, okay, like I have my people that are still handling things. I can take a day off or half a day off and be fine. It's just I'm in that stage. I'm 27. 20, I just turned 28. I'm 28.
Okay.
I'm in like what I would consider probably the busiest phase of my life. There's just a lot of building going on.
Yeah, that's a fun part though, right? I don't know about you, but it's you get in that stage where you're like, look, the harder I work, the more fun it becomes. Once you kind of get over the hump, it feels like it's like you gotta put in some time for a year or two, and all of a sudden you're like, dude, it's not so bad to work this hard, but at the same time, you start seeing success and you see things grow, and you're on your way. Let's talk about the things that you do have going on, especially in the summer. With your academy and your training, and you've been doing this for a long time, but I know you've been molding that program to get it where it is now. What is it looking like right now?
Yeah, it's been going on for a while. So like I said, I'm 28. I've been training riders since I was 14. I formed the actual academy when I was probably 2016. So it's been going on 5 years of structured classes with the curriculum that I've built out. And the struggle has been racing and doing the teaching and figuring out what that balance is, right? Because a true racer can only be at the top of his game unless he's racing and racing only. There's just no exception to that. And I thought that there was a way around it, but there's not. So I had to kind of pick one or the other the last 5 years, and I picked building the business and building the academy. So it's now at a spot, and I've noticed in the last 12 months, it was constantly, kind of building and building. And the last, with COVID and all that, it's just gone to another level. And COVID combined with just the natural progression of where I was at. So the exciting thing is I've built the academy to the point where I think it's self-sustaining enough to where I can maybe shift my focus back into racing for the next few years. And I feel like I'm in a good point in my life. I'm 28. I may not even be at my peak yet, or I'm right at my peak. I feel really, really good physically. So I'm excited. I think that the academy could be reaching its pinnacle, and then I could make a late career, like come into stride, just
Little
like a Damar
surge.
or Nicoletti. There's so many guys Weston Pike, there's so many guys that came into like their prime really late in their career. I feel like there's no reason why I couldn't be one of those guys.
So, this is way early in the interview to ask this question, but what are we looking at here? What's the plan? What are we setting up?
So I bought some property in Naples, Florida. I'm going to have a track down there. So we have a home in Reston, Virginia. And then we have another home we just moved to in Leesburg, but we're in Northern Virginia. So that's kind of my home base at the moment. Only problem is I've been trying to do my riding when I do my riding up here, just riding like in the snow or frozen track, and I'll just get a little bit of seat time in before the season, just because I just simply didn't have time for it. So this year I have cleared my calendar from December 1 to March 31st. And I'm going to dedicate that time block to just racing and training. Now, is that enough to be a top 10 guy? No. But is that enough for me to be at least back consistently making 450 main events and being competitive like I was in 2013, 2015? Sure. And then for me, that'll be enough, I think, to build the confidence and take that into the next year, 2 years, 3 years. I think in the past, when I've told myself, okay, I'm going to go for it this year, and then it didn't pan out the way I wanted to, I would give up after that 1 year. And it takes more than a year. I'm years behind.
Yeah, you gotta kind of build towards it, right? You gotta rebuild the base.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, I've been racing Supercross the last 5 years from muscle memory of my training that I did in 2011, 2012, 2013. So it's just, luckily, Supercross comes natural to me. It's a little bit less physical, or a lot less physical than outdoors. So I don't have to be in insane shape on the bike. I can more so just rely on my technique that kind of like, I know how to hit whoops, right? I know how to time a Supercross triple or a rhythm section. And I kind of just get by racing because I'm fast enough in the whoops, and I can clear the rhythm sections to where I can be at least like halfway competitive.
Right.
But taking that to the next step of race pace, you do have to have that fitness, and you have to have a lot more commitment and endurance and all of it.
Personality question for you, because I know you well enough. I've talked to you enough. You're very detailed, and especially when it comes to the fundamentals on the bike, riding correctly. I mean, you're very detailed on those little things. When I hear you say you have December 1st till whatever in March blocked off, are you just one of those people that you've got to build it in detail and it has to be set and roll, or is there a wiggle room in there? Because I know the way you teach fundamentally on the motorcycle. Is it the same way when it comes to planning and scheduling and doing all the things you want to do?
Yes and no. So I'm very detail oriented when it comes to riding and training. Yes, but I would say I do live a lot of my life just kind of by the seat of my pants. Which I like. My wife hates it. But I will say I'm strict about that December 1 to March 31 timeline, because I know what will happen. And what will happen is if I say, okay, I'm just going to do this class, or I'm just going to train these couple riders on this day, that will turn into getting greedy in a sense with my schedule, and then just booking out all of that entire 3 months or 4 months or whatever that is. So I'm just telling myself like a hard no. I'm going to dedicate that time to myself and come up with a schedule for myself Monday through Friday, so I can actually be in a fairly strict training program and not be distracted by working with other riders. And then I'll make sure that I just dedicate April 1 all the way through December 1 as that time for everybody else.
Nice. Explain to me Virginia and Florida, because I mean, is that something that's being built down south, but you're based up north right now, and that's where mostly everything's going on now?
Yeah. So my home track is Tomahawk MX, and Chad at Tomahawk is amazing. There's a lot of really cool track owners out there, but Chad is just willing to work with me on everything, and very, very generous when it comes to making sure that he puts property aside for me and just allows all my training that needs to go on there. And Tomahawk is although it's in West Virginia, you would think middle of nowhere, it's centrally located to like 6 different states that you can get there within 3 hours from 6 different states. So as far as training goes, it's probably, other than SoCal, the best track that I can think of location wise. And so I've been lucky to have that as my home base over the last 3 years now. And then Florida was kind of the next step of, okay, first of all, being near family. We have family in Naples, and I knew there weren't any motocross tracks there because it's Naples and it's on the water, and usually all your motocross tracks are pretty central.
Yep.
I knew I couldn't sell the wife on moving to Florida if we were going to be in the middle of Florida. So
so location was key.
Yeah. So it's a compromise, right?
Yep.
And I was trying to navigate that, and I got an email from a fan of my YouTube channel who said they had some property and wanted me to come check it out. And I was just so happened to be flying into RSW Airport the next week. So I stopped by his property, and it's the perfect piece of property. So I was like, wow, this just worked out unreal. So I don't know if I'll have a Supercross track there right away or not, but I'll have a cool track and I'll be able to ride every single day. And for me, that's all that matters. Like, seat time is seat time. I don't care if I'm riding in a circle or riding on a Supercross track, as long as I'm on my bike riding.
I want to get to that in a second, as far as the way you do your classes in your schools and the fundamentals. Again, I find you to be, I mean, pretty dang advanced when it comes to that stuff. The things you notice just on Race Day Live this year, I think you were on for 30 minutes and picking apart different things about riders. So I do want to get into that. But when it comes to your Supercross racing, has it been hard the last few years to be there, have the muscle memory and the talent to be competitive, but also knowing that you haven't been able to invest everything into yourself and not be in the main events all the time, have guys that you could probably beat regularly getting in there? How have you been able to deal with that, knowing that you could do so much more if you applied it all to this, but you had to do both? I mean, how did you kind of juggle that, I guess, more on the emotional side, knowing that you could be doing better because you know how talented you are?
Yeah, good question. And thank you for the compliment on being analytical. Like, that's why I like you as a broadcaster. Like, you are the perfect balance between entertainment and professionalism, but also, like, you really know how to analyze, which I think is
Thanks, man.
awesome. As somebody that's like really into the sport, I think that's cool, but I think it's important for the people that are new as well. I know that's the argument. Like, do we dumb it
Yep.
down? Do we not dumb it down? I think the way that you talk about riding and technique is easy for anybody to digest, even somebody that's watching it for the first time. And it's the same way. That's what makes a good teacher. I'm sure you've taught before. You would be a good
Yep.
teacher, just the way you explain things.
Yep. Thank you.
And it's the same thing with me. Like, it is, if you can break it down simple enough and create a step-by-step process, anybody can understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And even the guys at the highest level, when they crash, when they make a mistake, when they do something right, it's all easy. It's easy to explain if you know what you're looking for, because
Right.
it's all the basic fundamentals. They're not doing a ton of stuff that's ridiculously complicated. They've just mastered the simple things, and they can make very difficult things look very easy. That's all that is.
Right.
But to answer your question, I have done a good job, I think, the last few years of managing expectations. So I go into the races and just know that I want to go there to have fun. My goal setting was different. My goal setting wasn't, okay, I'm going to show up and my goal is top 20. My goal is top 15. No, my goal was literally my goal for this year was to impress people that were in my inner circle, based on them knowing how little that I ride a dirt bike. If anybody knew how little I rode a dirt bike, they'd be amazed that I could even circulate a Supercross track safely. So my goal was to impress my inner circle and have them be like, oh man, like he still got it. Like, he can still do it. And that was a fun little goal that each weekend I could kind of try to get a good start or try to make a pass on somebody they didn't expect me to. Like, small little accomplishments to kind of check it off the box and make it a fulfilling experience, rather than, okay, my goal is top 20. So if I don't get top 20 the whole season, the season was a failure. No, I haven't made a main event in going on 2 years, or maybe even more than 2 years at this point. And I've had a ton of fun. I had more fun last Supercross season than I've had my entire life. If I could take that type of mindset and combine that with actual preparation, that would be a good combination.
And higher expectations then, because you put the work in, so now you can reach for something a little higher.
Yeah. Well, naturally, I think the higher expectations, if I'm smart about it, it will just organically happen, because I'll just start doing better. I think that I try to have no expectations. I try to just stay and ride in the moment as much as I can.
Mm-hmm.
I think expectations bring you more into the future. So then you're thinking about, what should I be doing next week? Or what could I do this weekend? Or what could I do this moto? And you're constantly in the future and thinking, like, that brings on an anxiety.
Right.
I know it brings on for me even physical symptoms. Like, I could sit and talk about the race that's coming up next weekend. My palms start sweating and I start feeling kind of crappy. The more I can just focus in the actual moment, the better off. I know how to ride a dirt bike. If I'm prepared, I'm going to do well. There's no need for me to expect anything or to think about what's going to happen, if that makes sense.
Oh, it does for sure. seeing the schedule, knowing that you're starting December 1st, you're going to get over a month before we get back to a regular start date. When that schedule came out, I mean, what did you think? It's been different for a while now, so it feels different to go back to normal, at least just looking at the schedule. But what was your first thoughts when you saw it?
I was surprised that it was so normal.
Right? Me too. Anaheim, Oakland. I was like, whew.
Yeah,
All right.
I was surprised. I'm not going to lie. I was a little bummed about all the California rounds just because that's so much traveling for me from the East Coast. So selfishly, I was a little bummed on that, but I was excited just to see the schedule go back to normal. Or I shouldn't even air quote that. It's a normal schedule.
Yep.
Right. There's some tracks on there that I love. St. Louis is my favorite. There's a few really good ones. I'm pumped. I'm pumped. I like whatever the schedule throws at us, I think is cool. I was excited last year to have a bunch all in one spot. I thought that was interesting. But yeah,
I think I'm with you. I feel like the changes that we've had to go through, yeah, they were unique, but they weren't unique in a bad way. You know, the run we did in Salt Lake City was like, it was like summer camp. We were all there. Then last year, the residencies, you actually get to see a couple of these cities that you fly into every week that you don't get to hang in ever. And I think it was awesome that we were able to have good championships and do it all like that and kind of live that experience. But at the same time, when that new schedule came out, it's like, it just feels like that tradition is back, you know, Big Anaheim 1 and starting west and heading east. And I don't know. I'm with you. When I saw it, it was like a feeling of relief and a feeling of, okay, I'm stoked with what we've got to do the last couple of years, but this is good too. Like this normal feeling is pretty good.
totally agree. Having A1 to start the season, I love. I think it's super cool. There's no feeling, there's no vibe or energy like that. The only thing I do miss is I miss Vegas for the last round, but I'm starting to get more and more used to Salt Lake because it is a great venue. It's just, for me, I was always so used to seeing Vegas as that last round. So it's just getting used to Salt Lake becoming that kind of mainstay for the last time.
I'm with you, but here's the issue. So I just turned 39. So I'm like, I feel like I'm past Vegas a little bit. Like,
oh, I'm past Vegas too.
Dude, like
totally.
I feel with you. Like if we're racing in Vegas, that's cool. But as far as the extra Vegas stuff, I'm personally over that stuff. Like I don't want to go. I mean, I'm over the casinos. I'm over the run through town. Like, I don't know. I haven't enjoyed that place as far as I've always enjoyed the race, whether it's Monster Cup or Supercross, but the actual town of Las Vegas hasn't been that intriguing for me. I don't know. You're still in your 20s. You might have a year or two to go, but dude, I'm over it.
No, I agree with that. But also, I don't know if I necessarily enjoy the town of Anaheim.
That's true. That's true. Anaheim's not like the coolest hangout.
It just brought us like a different type of energy, I think.
Yeah.
Although I will say Salt Lake's cool, man. Salt Lake is really cool.
It's become kind of like a little secret spot for the sport. I think everybody really digs it up there. So it's definitely cool. But yeah, Anaheim, see the Vegas finale, I was like, okay, but the Anaheim opener, that is, can't mess with that.
Yeah.
Something about A1 and that stadium, and it's the first time you get to smell the race fuel again. You're like, oh, we're back. So I'm stoked to get that going. But I'll come back around to Supercross next year. We'll talk about it in a bit, but I do want to focus on the academy. So what I've noticed is that you do a lot of things on your own. Obviously, you have to, but then you'll bring people in, different people with different skill sets and different backgrounds to kind of do these co-schools with you. Kind of walk me through your method and like the formula and the way you do things.
Yeah. So my original idea with bringing in guest instructors was to build the brand. I thought, well, yeah, when these guys come, the students, whether they realize it or not, are still going to get 95% of their information from me. But it's a cool experience to have Dean Wilson, Adam Cincerillo, Austin Faulkner, Jet Lawrence. I've brought a lot of really cool riders into these things, and students get excited about it. So for me, at the beginning, it was to build the brand and associate those guys' names with the academy, and just to get more riders to the camps. Riders to the camps that maybe would have never came if it was just AJ Catanzaro. But then once they come and they say, okay, well, this guy knows what he's doing. He's a nice guy. He knows how to teach. I could get them back for classes by myself. So it was just a building phase. Now, especially last year with having the races, two at one town or 3 in one city, I was able to have classes in those locations and bring in guys each week. So then as my brand was building, I was like, oh, this is almost turning into bragging rights for like a high level privateer guy. Like when they reach a certain status or a certain level of riding, they can be brought in as a guest instructor for the Moto Academy. So I was having guys like Cade Clayson when he started really making main events like crazy. Cade came in. We had Kevin Moran's. He got hurt. He wasn't able to show up, but we had him scheduled for one. We had Lane Shaw. We had a whole bunch of like fast privateer guys that came in and did them. And in my mind, I was like thinking of Joe Rogan's podcast, where it's like the ultimate bragging right to be able to go on Joe Rogan's podcast eventually.
Yeah.
At one point. And not that it's by no means anywhere close to is that cool, but in my head, I was like, maybe we could start to build it to where these riders come to me and they try to make these things happen. And I don't know. For me, it's just all these little ideas that I have that I think that eventually could build to something really cool and exciting.
Do you personally find it more difficult, less difficult, more fun, less fun when you have like a big group versus a small group? Because I've done coaching too, where you might have 2 or 3 kids and it's very detailed. And then you have some where you have 10 to 15 and you're covering more basics. And I've kind of swayed in and out of which one I like more. I guess it just depends on the group and the day and the track. But for you, do you feel like you like one better than the other, or do you find one more difficult compared to the other when it comes to these bigger or smaller groups?
Good question. I go back and forth on that all the time too. I go through little stints of only wanting to do 1 to 5 riders and keep it like completely private. And then there's times where I have no motivation to do that. And I enjoy the classes with 20, 30, 40 riders in them.
Yeah.
It totally depends, I think, I tell you what, first of all, track is important, and not for the reasons that a lot of people would think the track is important. It's good to have a track that, first of all, has dust control. Like when the track's dusty, there's nothing worse. It's important for the track to have a good perimeter or like infield area to be able to pull riders off. As silly as that sounds, like that is
a track that makes sense so you can get your work in. Otherwise, you can't wait 3 minutes for them to get back. I know what you're saying. It's got to be able to be workable.
That could totally screw up your flow. If you have a track that doesn't offer that, it almost makes it impossible, and it can ruin my day as an instructor. I don't know if any other people notice, but for sure for me, I'm like, man, this is really screwing things up. The most important factor, I think, though, is just the individual or group of riders that you're working with. I've gone to locations before, not so much anymore, because I think people connect with me as a YouTube personality now, and they know me more, right? So I think, feel a little more comfortable having conversations and talking to me. But in the past, I've had classes where it was like talking to a brick wall the entire class with 20 riders. I didn't get any engagement and nobody would speak back at all. And obviously that makes it less enjoyable for me. The best classes are the ones where people are rattling off questions left and right and joking about things. And then somebody asks a dumb question and then it just makes everybody laugh. And then I love that. And I think that leads to good conversation and ultimately people learn more. Right.
So yeah. And I guess the correct answer is both, depending on the situation, but at least you have both. If you're just doing 20, 30 rider camps only, then yeah, you're hoping that the group is good. And if it is, it's good. If it's not, it's not. But if you're able to bounce back around, you can sharpen up your skill sets a little bit too, right? Because when you do have 2 to 3 or maybe 5 riders max, you are definitely diving into those individual riders' characteristics more. Where if you have that big camp, it's like, everybody keep up. Let's do all of our things. You know what I mean? So does it feel good to be able to bounce back and almost sharpen up your skill sets as you go back and forth?
100%, because it is completely different in that I do try to make my classes personalized when I can, when there's 20, 30 guys, but it's talking a lot more about the general stuff and almost not reading a script, but pretty darn close. I mean, I don't even think about what's coming out of my mouth at those big classes. It's just, I've done it so many times now that I'm pretty smooth with it and it just rolls off the tip of the tongue. But then again, there's challenges to that as well. And knowing, like, there's so many things, and I love this, that makes a good instructor. Like, there's a time and place where I'll notice that somebody is getting discouraged, or maybe they're embarrassed, and I try to use that as a learning moment for them. So there's been multiple occasions lately where My big thing is feet on the pegs. So people argue feet on the pegs all the time. I say, keep your feet on the pegs the whole time. That's how I will teach my kid how to ride. That's how I try to ride. So I say, if your foot touches the ground, or in some situations, if it even comes off the foot peg, 10 push-ups. So at the end of their session, then we then get a bunch of people having to do push-ups. The last 2 classes, I had one person at each of those classes not physically be able to do a push-up. One of which I don't think physically could do it. The other girl, I think she was embarrassed because she thought everybody was watching her and caring about what she was doing. Right. So I used both of those as learning experiences. One of them, I gave the kid who couldn't physically do a push-up a compliment on his riding, just to make sure that he had a compliment, right? And then I used that as a learning lesson for the class. Like, listen, we're riding these powerful machines. If we can't do a push-up and engage our core enough to be able to like stay in a plank position to do the push-up, we shouldn't be on a dirt bike. So I taught him proper form in the push-up, how to engage his core and tighten his abs to keep that plank position. For the girl, it was a learning experience. I thought, just to try to teach her quickly, I said, she started crying. And I said, why are you crying? In front of the whole class. Why are you crying? And she said, I don't know. I said, well, tell me, why are you crying? I said, are you hurt? No. Are you scared? No. Are you embarrassed because everybody's watching you? Yeah.
Yep.
And I said, okay, take a look around. Everybody is watching us right now, but nobody cares if you can do a push-up or not, other than you. Nobody cares if you're doing a push-up in front of the whole class, other than you. And I said, you are the only person, because you're thinking about it so much, that cares about what's happening right now. No, you should not be embarrassed. Do what you're doing. Nobody else cares about what you're doing. And I've worded it better than that in the moment, but she was so in her head and so nervous about what everybody else was thinking. I was trying to explain to her that she's just creating that in her own mind and to not be embarrassed. And I got her to do a push-up in front of everybody, and you could tell her confidence came up a level or two. Yeah. And then shortly thereafter, there was a couple kids who I had to do push-ups that weren't very good at them. And her one push-up that she did was actually great. By the end of class, she was getting off her bike and doing push-ups just to show the boys that she could do the push-ups.
She needed a little push, just needed a little help getting going, found a little confidence. Once she found it, then she's like, what's up?
Yeah. Then she was busting push-ups just to show everybody.
No, that's funny. I mean, I know that you work with these riders on technique and fundamentals too, but I mean, how important is that mental side to the more beginner rider too, and just confidence? I've worked with riders too, where they would do a lot better if they believed in themselves just a little bit. And I'm assuming you deal with that too, where you just got to give them a little boost. And once you send them on their way, everything starts clicking because maybe they were just in their own way a little bit. I mean, you come across that a bunch?
All the time. It's important, not just in riding, it's important in life. I mean, to be able to have a game plan and to believe in yourself enough to stick with the game plan and not abort mission every time something small goes wrong. You see riders, and this can be a metaphor for anything. You see riders get in position and they look great. And then as soon as they encounter anything that is slightly difficult, they abort mission on technique, and then it gets 10 times more difficult because of that. Same thing in life. People encounter something that's like a tough time or a difficult situation, and they reroute from the game plan. And it's like, no.
Fall back on bad habits.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, yeah, immediately, almost like it's a comfort thing, is to fall back on the thing that was making you uncomfortable in the beginning.
So
the mind.
Yeah. Oh, trust me. And I'm a head case myself at times, for sure. But I just try to remind my students, I say, listen, not to toot my own horn, I know that I'm a good instructor. I said, if you just trust me, all you have to do is trust me. Because if I tell you to do something, if I tell you to do this jump or to do this a specific way, it's because I believe 100% and I know that you can do it. So if you just listen to what I'm saying and do what I'm saying, you will be fine.
And then they get the confidence bump, and the next thing they know, they believe more. Starts opening. It seems like it opens things up for riders. Once they have a little bit of belief, it's infectious.
Yep. Yeah. As soon as they trust me, commit to doing it right, do it right, understand how easy it was to do it right. And then it's just like, boom, the light bulb goes off, and now now it's easy.
So two-part
And that's
question.
fulfillment as an instructor. That's what's cool
right.
about it.
That's when it comes back to you and you're like, that's when you are succeeding on that day, when they're succeeding. I know that feeling for sure. So two-part question. We'll start with the more beginner rider first. When you start working with somebody who's new, beginner novice, and there's skill there, but you can see some things are off, what's your approach with those fundamentals as far as getting them to understand like certain things? Because I know a lot of riders, they want to go fast, right? They want to work with you because they want to get fast, and you're like, hold up. How do you approach someone like that and kind of reset the body and the style and get everything in order for the speed that you know is coming soon?
It's all about forcing them to go slow. And there's a couple ways I do that. So, and I'm guilty of going too slow myself all the time, but that's what I've built my riding career on. I've never tried to go fast ever. I'm never growing up as an amateur. We never did lap times. We never did sprint laps. Of course, I probably would have benefited from doing some of that, but my entire riding career was built on just learning the technique and trying to do it the right way and to be safe in doing so. So you always have the students that are a little bit gung-ho and just trying to go wide open. You have students that are even somewhere in the middle ground that still have to back off a little bit. So my technique is I try to just strip away things to make it where they have no choice but to go a little slower. So a couple good techniques for that. Stand-up drill. You could do the stand-up drill. That way they can focus solely on the attack position. It forces them to go slightly slower in the corners so they can focus on technique as opposed to just hanging on for dear life. That's a good one. Feet on the pegs in general will slow you down just enough at first to do that. You could strip away the clutch. You could strip away using the rear brake. And then honestly, the one big one that I like, and I'll throw it at students right off the bat and it throws them for a loop, is the one hand drill. The one hand, all it does is show you what you're doing wrong from your feet to your head within that body position. Like you will know right away. If your footwork's off and your toes are pointed out and you're not gripping with those knees, you're going to start shimmying off the back of the bike really quick. If you're a clutch abuser, well, you don't have that hand on the clutch anymore. All of those things, it will show you any bad habit that you have. And when people do the one hand drill, a lot of them, that light bulb goes off and they realize, oh, wow, like now I understand how I'm supposed to ride. And if they could take that finesse and that level of technique to riding with two hands on, then that's the ticket.
So it exposes is what it does. It exposes some issues. You clean it up, then you get it back and you're like, there you go. It's like just repositioning.
Yeah. So a guy that's like out there just going wide open, I'll just say, hey, take the hand off and then let's see. So
good luck.
Yeah. Good luck. And if they don't want to kill themselves, they have to go slower and they have to figure out the right way to do it. I could tell somebody to take their hand off with giving them no other form of instruction, and they will start to figure it out. Because you realize, oh, when I put my foot out for a corner and my foot dabs the ground and it pulls my leg away from the bike, I don't have that other arm to muscle out of this anymore. Like it makes them realize how important those little things are. Or when I'm going through a corner and all of a sudden my elbow drops and my head fades into the corner, oh, wow, I realize how big of a deal that actually is if I don't tighten my abs and keep my head straight in the corner.
Right.
Every mistake you can think of making, one hand drill will expose it.
Right. Well, and the one hand drill, obviously you can't do the throttle hand because then you can't go. So you're getting that left hand off, which means you're off that clutch. And dude, I just got to tell you a funny story. I had a kid a couple of years ago, fast kid, but he was a clutcher. And you know the old clutchers, right? It's just around everything. And I'm just like, what am I going to do here? So we started doing motos where I would say, you can't touch your clutch at all. And he was pissed. Like, how am I going to go fast? Whatever. So I ended up doing a 20-minute moto with him. Don't touch your clutch one time. And I was doing stopwatch on my own, just timing, checking. Pulls in. I said, all right, go back. You can use your clutch. Give me 2 hot laps as hard as you can. You can have your clutch back. Just end this session on fire. Dude, his times were slower on the last 2 when he got his clutch back. And when I told him that and showed his dad, the dad was stoked. He was like, good, because I'm frying clutches. The kid was almost mad because it's like he
probably thought you were tricking him.
He thought I was. And then, but it was great because we started doing that just once a day. It was the first ride of the day and worked it out. It got rid of the problem. And we didn't overnight it, but it took a little while.
Mm-hmm.
And the kid is a shredder now. And if you watch him come in the corners, his fingers on the clutch, he barely touches it. Might need a little just to adapt. And this kid was a violent clutcher. And it's cool though. You got to find the way to the kid, right? You got to find the way to get to him, because on some things they don't want to give it up. And the clutch seems to me like the big one.
Yeah. Well, that's a fun thing as an instructor too, is everybody's different. So you have to learn personalities quickly and try to understand how to get through to that individual. And there's so many different ways to do it with so many different people. So that's a fun challenge. But the way that I teach, and I'm sure the way that you teach too, since you're so technical, is just to simplify things, to get rid of the clutch when you don't need it and you don't need to confuse the bike, right?
Yep.
Stand up where you shouldn't be, like, just don't put your foot out in situations because it's just an extra movement. There's so many extra things that riders do. And I use 4 riders as a good example. And they just coincidentally, all 4 of them are on Hondas. Chase Sexton, Ken Roxon, Jet Lawrence, Hunter Lawrence. To me, those are the 4.
Fundamentally the 4 best, right? Probably the best.
Mm-hmm. There's no question. And to me, is barring any major injuries, Jet and Hunter Lawrence, I think, will be the future of the 450 class, because they're just light years ahead of that's a bold statement, but they're just light years ahead technique wise of everybody else in the 250 class. And that's why you're seeing Chase Sexton excel in the 450 so quickly. And he's not a big dude. He just rides the bike the right way. And there's the common theme between those 4. And what is it? Everybody watches them and they go, man, are they trying? That's the type of rider you want to be.
Because they are, but they're riding so perfect with their fundamentals that it doesn't look excessive. I try to teach my son that, like, I want him to be a no waste rider. You don't waste time, waste energy, waste all that. Like you said, put a leg out when you don't need to. And when you watch those guys, it's so unbelievably fundamental. And sometimes it does look like they're not going very fast. I don't know if you watched Washouts, but Chase won that race, and it was like so clean. It was almost boring because he just did nothing wrong the entire moto. And then it was over, and I'm like, I don't think the guy did one thing wrong for 30+2. Fundamentally, he never broke.
Yep.
And it was so clean, and he won the race. And not everyone's going to work that way, right? Like, I think we would both admit Eli Tomac is pretty dang phenomenal, but Eli is going to ride the wheels off the bike. He's going to hammer that clutch. He's going to do it completely different. So to your point, you figure out what works for each guy. But man, if you could steer him over to that just perfect fundamental, it makes things a lot easier for him.
Oh, what people have to understand is that Tomac, Barsha, those guys are like, they're anomalies. That's the exception to the rule, sort of. The level of fitness required to ride that aggressive and that hard the whole time is unbelievable.
Not everyone's going to be able to do that. That's rare.
Every person can ride how Jet Lawrence rides. It's an easy way to ride. It's how I think that I ride. Very simplified. I don't do anything super flashy. I don't make mistakes all that often. I'm very, from the waist up when I sit, my upper body stabilization, I'm like very, very neutral on the bike. You don't see me fall inside of corners a lot. So therefore I don't make mistakes super often. Everybody is capable of riding that way. So that's the way that I teach.
Because that can be taught early too. And then you go from there. That's what I've done with my son, is try to get the fundamentals right first, because the speed's going to come with the confidence and the age and the bikes. And if you don't have all those fundamentals in place, it could be a rough road. Like you could have a lot of crashes, a lot of injuries on your way to whatever success you might find. You still might find it, but you're going to have a bumpy road if those fundamentals are off. Does that make sense?
Well, and this is bold too, but there's guys out there, and I'm friends with these guys. RJ Hampshire. If RJ could clean up some things, he is, first of all, has like serious mental game. Like, that guy is wicked freaking determined. Not only that, he's extremely fit, but it's like, dude, if you could just fix a couple things, like fix your elbows, get your elbows up so that your head doesn't constantly fall inside of the bike, and you won't end up on your head 2 times a race, and you won't get hurt so often. So it's frustrating for me to watch, because there are such high level guys like that, where if they fix 1 or 2 little things,
could make a big difference.
Yeah. I understand that's easy for me to say on the outside looking in, because when you're at that level, it's very hard to take it down a couple notches to fix those things. But if you want to have longevity in your career, I think that that's a must.
Right, right. Maybe that's like an off-season type thing, right? Where you
Yeah.
can, no
Corner
pressure,
track.
just go and just fix a couple things. And Ryan Sipes, I've always been impressed by Ryan Sipes, and I had a chance to live with him and Will Hahn for a while back in 2009. And Ryan would do some of the weirdest drills. He would do just the oddest things, and it's funny to see him now be so diverse, because like that skill set can translate across the board if you really develop it. And he would do the weirdest figure eights, feet up, all those kinds of things. And I would just do them with him, like, because it was fun, but I didn't realize that he was really implementing a certain type of structure in his riding that you still watch him ride today. He'll show up at an outdoor national or a Supercross, and you're like, God, how is that guy still so good? I think it all goes back to those core fundamentals and just the way he rides the bike.
Yeah. And that also, there's a lot of bike skill involved, where little drills that are often overlooked. When I was little, my dad had me practice nose wheelies, slow wheelies. I did the one hand drill. He would have me do freestyle tricks. I learned a whole bunch of tricks, like it went balance game. So I would shut the bike off, put in neutral, and just try to sit there with the bike off and balance as long as I could. All of those things develop an understanding of how the bike works, and that leads to bike skill. So the slow wheelies and the wheelie practice ultimately is what I feel like made me a confident whoop rider, because I could learn to miss a whoop, and I would be confident in placing the tire on the next one, or knowing how to place the tire where it needed to go. It also led to me being good at tire tapping things. There's not a lot of guys out there that are good at tire tapping. Jet Lawrence is one of them. Jet Lawrence can tire tap because he's good at doing wheelies. He's good at doing nose wheelies. A lot of people look at that as screwing around, but that develops bike skill.
Do you feel too, screwing around is needed also? How hard these guys work and train, and it's all about winning and focus. Do you feel like that's a good little relief to play around on your bike and actually like enjoy the thing? Not only does it help you with your skills, but even mentally, I feel, and emotionally, it's just like a relief to remind yourself how fun your dirt bike is, because at the level that you're at and everybody's at, I feel like that gets lost in this sometimes.
Totally. And there's no reason you can't put 10 minutes aside a day to throw some whips and to do some wheelies and nose wheelies, right?
And just make it, yeah.
Axel Hodges is an unbelievable rider, and he just has a lot of bike skill because he's spent a lot of time screwing around on his bike and figuring out exactly how it works at all times. And that becomes important when you get yourself into a weird situation, when you get kicked a certain way, or when you riding a super rough outdoor track. You can get creative and start to really put that bike in certain places that maybe other riders just try to muscle through it and it doesn't work. You see Jet Lawrence do a lot of stuff on the outdoor track that's like, holy crap, what was that? Where he's wheeling through this and purposely dropping the front end here. And it's,
I've noticed with him a couple of times coming down some downhills, little mini washouts that would usually screw somebody up. He doesn't even acknowledge them. Almost like the front end can do some loose stuff, make a little mistake, and you don't even notice that he made a mistake, because again, it's probably that bike skill where he knows what it's going to do. So when it does it, we would all be like, but for him, it's like, it's not, it's nothing. It probably goes back to that bike skill to be able to make little mistakes not even look like they happened when we noticed it happen, but he doesn't even acknowledge it.
Yep. Yeah. It's funny. You and I could nerd out on
technique. Oh yeah, we can go forever. I do have one final question for you before we end this interview. So we know December, you're getting to it, getting ready. But what's the program look like? Do you even know yet, as far as the bike, the team, the program, as far as in the pits and what you'll be on? Do you have any idea what that's going to look like yet?
I have no idea. No idea. Well, I shouldn't say I have no idea. I've narrowed it down to I have 3 colors in my mind that I want to ride, and I just have to pick one.
Are they all similar?
No, they're not.
Okay. Okay.
Good question. No, in fact, they're not. So
okay, cool. So those details aren't worked out yet.
One of the colors has other colors that look and feel similar. Does that make sense?
Red.
One of them also has 2 other bikes that are different colors, but also the same bike.
Okay. That's fine. So that part though, we're working on still. And when do you think you'll have that all tightened
up? I don't know.
Up?
Hopefully here soon. I'm in a position to where I can kind of do what I want. Financially, I have the freedom to do what I want. I think I'm in a great position where there's a lot of people that want to get on board and support. SGB suspension, if we stick to the plan with them, that they've been supporting big time the last couple of years as well. So yeah, it's just a matter of kind of figuring out what makes the most sense with my brand and all of that. It's tough. I tell you what, like, and again, I'm sure you're familiar with this. I'm sure as a brand begins to grow and you grow just as an individual, there is constant shifting. And I am in the shifting phase. Like I'm going here and I'm like, okay, well, this was great, but this didn't really make sense. All right, we're going back over here. And there's just so many little things going on. I can visualize now the big picture. I can see the 5 years out where I couldn't see that before. I can see it.
Right.
I just don't know the exact path yet. We're getting close. I'm definitely narrowing it down. But
yeah, that's good. It gets kind of fun too when you get near the end and you're like, what am I gonna do? So last question, I'm gonna sneak one more in. Last year you said the goal was to impress the inner circle, show everybody you still got it. Do you have expectations yet for next year, or is that something that'll develop maybe as we get a little bit closer and you know how you're feeling?
I'd want to do the same idea, but I'd like to impress not just my inner circle, the outer circle, and everybody else this year. I think there's a lot of people that have written me off as maybe being washed up, or like I'm too old, or that I don't have it anymore. And I know that I could still do halfway decent. I don't think I'm going to set the world on fire and go out and get a top 5 or a top 10 necessarily, unless I do 250 class. I think top 10 would be possible, but results aside, I don't care about results. I just want to go out, be fit, be able to be competitive, and have some people out there be like, oh man, all right, this guy, Cat still got it. Like that's all I want. That's all I want.
Well, I believe in you. So you got one right here already.
Thank you.
I think you'll be just fine because I know how good you are when you're juggling everything. So full commitment will be fun to watch. But AJ, thanks for coming on Beyond the Track, man. I appreciate it. Glad we were able to knock this out, and look forward to the fall and hearing how this whole thing comes together.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me.